Have you ever wanted to make a movie? Thanks to technology, anyone can make a movie today. Filmmaking has become the new garage band. Welcome to Framelines, the show about people making movies.
Framelines is brought to you in part by Sabo Studios, gear for the show. Tape Central, providing your media needs. Production Partners Media, affordable media solutions. And by grants from the Greater Columbus Arts Council and the Ohio Arts Council.
Matt Meindl is an award-winning filmmaker from Columbus, Ohio. We're going to go behind the scenes with Matt on his latest project.
If t-shirts were indicators of some sort of personal allegiance or endorsement, this t-shirt, worn by me, would proclaim my allegiance to myself. It seemed like it would be rude to wear it, antisocial even, a display of self-interest so pure and unmitigated as to threaten the cooperative bonds of civilization itself. There was simply no way I could wear the t-shirt.
For a long time, I had wanted to be like an illustrator, and I would draw comic strips and things like that, and I also wanted to be a musician, and I would write songs and put out little cassette tapes. After high school, I actually kept making short monster movies with my friends, and then at some point I had decided that I was going to go to film school and try to take it serious. So I ended up going to the University of Toledo to their film program there. Film school was actually really fun because we were just surrounded by other people who just wanted to do the same thing. It was a good opportunity to kind of take some time to figure out what kind of filmmaker I wanted to be, because everybody, I was like everybody else. You start off thinking I'm going to make feature-length narratives. The more time that I had to experiment, the more I realized that there were other ways of filmmaking that I was more interested in more experimental stuff and animation. So after I graduated from college, I moved back to Columbus and gradually started to meet other filmmakers here and started to have a group of people that I could work with almost the same as when I was in school, and started making new shorts again after maybe a year or so of living back in Columbus. And the one really big change, it seems like, in Columbus was I feel like when I came here, there were a really small handful of people, and now it seems like there's a ton of people. It's like our Columbus filmmakers are just like rabbits. Like suddenly there's everywhere, and you're just like tripping over them and stuff. That was in 2006 when I moved back, and now in 2012, it just seems like the filmmakers have increased in number, and the city has really made an effort to accommodate them. I would imagine that the big increase in filmmakers in Columbus is probably due to not just the accessibility of technology, but also I think probably the internet and social networking plays a role, because it's easier to find other people that are doing those same things around you, because I feel like otherwise there's just sort of parallel existences between filmmakers and people don't really know about each other. Don't Break Down is a short film that's sort of I consider an experimental documentary. It began when I moved. I got an apartment downtown and would just notice that people would throw away weird stuff, like weird things would end up often not in the dumpster, but next to the dumpster or in the street or hanging on the power lines. I would come home from work every day and you would just see the same weird crap on the ground, like there'd be like a wooden monkey and like an egg carton. It was kind of sad, but it was kind of funny too, and it was like you're kind of getting this awkward glimpse into how people live by seeing not only the things that they own, but sort of the way that they discard them. So I started documenting just very simply, just giving just simple shots of just stuff on the ground. I started bringing that stuff into my apartment and animating with it, doing sort of kind of collage style animation and things like that, so that because I like the idea of having sort of real footage, sort of as is footage, but then manipulating it to kind of bring out a particular feeling. And in 2011, I had applied for a couple of grants, and one of the ones that I got was an Artist in Residence grant from the Wexner Center. And it was really great. It was some money and support from their film video studio. So I actually did a little bit of shooting in their studio, and they helped me with get a hold of a couple props and things like that. And then they're also going to be doing the sound mix and the color grading. So it was a really great opportunity to make a short and have that kind of support. It made it easier for me to be a little bit more ambitious with this project. So the Wexner Center has I think they call it the Film Video Studio Program, where year-round they have media artists coming in and working either creating entire projects with them or just doing a post-production with them or that kind of thing. It's something you have to apply for. They do really good work, and it's a really cool, really supportive environment, especially if you're, if you're sort of trying more non-traditional things. They're totally into that. So the Greater Columbus Arts Council, which had not for a long time offered any kind of funding for Columbus filmmakers, actually reinstated the Media Arts Grant, Fellowship Grant, and so I applied for that and was one of the people that received a grant from them. Getting a film grant, I think it's not only, it helps your projects because you're less restricted financially, but I think it's also a bit of a confidence booster because if you're working independently, and especially if you're making sort of short form work, you tend to take yourself very seriously. Sometimes it's hard to feel like you really are making any headway or that you really know what you're doing. So it's nice to have that kind of imprimatur, that sort of stamp of approval from an arts organization. I mean, if you're a filmmaker working in Columbus, that's basically the only requirement to apply for the grant. My approach to filmmaking is I refer to myself sometimes as a hodgepodge filmmaker because I tend to work sort of piecemeal style on films, and I tend to, for whatever reason, really like to do sort of complicated ways of doing things, which would, things like stop motion animation or making little miniatures or things like that. Like basically anything that's tedious and time consuming is I'm all over that. The reason that I like to make the kinds of films that I make and that I work the way that I do is because when I was a kid and I was growing up and I really loved movies, the things that I really loved about the movies were like the little sort of almost like throwaway moments, where that you would be watching and there would just be maybe like some little fleeting moment where there was a really neat there was like a little music cue, and the actor had a certain expression or the landscape was this and whatever, and just for like a few moments you'd almost be like hypnotized by this little moment in the film. And of course it kind of reminds you of little moments in your life that everything sort of feels a certain way for a moment. So for better or worse, my interest has been in filmmaking has been less on story and has been more just on sort of mood and atmosphere and things like that. If you're a filmmaker starting out now, I think it's probably really hard because I feel like everybody makes films now and there's a real glut. However, I think there's a lot of the same kinds of things being made, so if you have a unique vision, if you have sort of maybe stranger ideas than what you're seeing, that's a really good thing. I would spend as much or more time honing that sensibility as I would learning, keeping up with the latest gear and learning technique, learning proper technique and things like that. I think there's a lot of really talented people in Columbus, and when people are able to work together, symbiotically, it's really, a lot of really good work gets made.
Coming up next, Framelines puts a spotlight on a person, place, or thing related to filmmaking.
Well, my name is Brent Sterling, and I'm the owner, one of the members of Sterling Stunts. We started back in the early 80s and have been going ever since. It's been kind of a family thing, and this is the first time that my son's actually been involved in actually doing a stunt. I kept it away from him for a long time. He didn't know what I did when he was young. It wasn't until he was about 10 years old he saw some old videotapes and seen what I did, and he said, I remember one time he said, "Dad, can I see that video again back when you had hair?" Because I've since lost it. The motorcycle stunt is called a jerk, and that's where actually the stuntman has a harness on under his clothes. He'll have a cable hooked up to him. The other end of the cable is hooked up to a shock system. He'll ride on a motorcycle till he hits the end of that cable, and then the cable actually jerks him off the bike. The stunt is enhanced by somebody shooting a blank shotgun at him so that it looks like the bullet knocked him off the bike, but it's actually a cable jerking him off of the bike. The keys to a good stunt is, first, nobody gets hurt. That's the first thing. But then to make it look as spectacular as you possibly can. Death-defying, like it'd be impossible for somebody to live through that. So that's what we're going for, as to be as dramatic as we can to show that. But the safety kind of counters that. So there's a fine line that you do. There's a little bit of magical things like a magician. There's a little bit of angles you use and the different props you use that makes it safer without losing that effect of it's so dangerous. If I was going to teach somebody to do this stunt and I don't encourage anybody to do this. But what I had, the 4 or 5 stuntmen I taught how to do this, there's certain things you got to make sure you do. You make sure your genitals isn't in that harness to start with, and your pads are on. But when you're riding a motorcycle and you know you're coming to that point that it's going to stop and it's going to jerk you off, you don't grip the motorcycle. You keep your hands loose. They're just laying on the handlebars. You also got to put your tongue inside your teeth and close your mouth. And then you got to lean your head down like this and breathe out all the air out of you. I know that all sounds simple, but believe it or not, that's very difficult to do when you got the fear that any second now, I'm going 20 miles an hour and I'm going to stop all of a sudden and get jerked off this motorcycle. You forget 1 or 2 of them, and inevitably you get some bumps and bruises and you bite your tongue and things like that happen. The more you do it, the more you get used to it and you realize, it's not that bad. You got enough pads. All these stuntmen are tough guys anyway. We put pads on them so they can do it over and over, but about any one of them could do it one time with nothing.
Peter John Ross takes a moment to show us a filmmaking tip.
For many people starting out making movies, just photographing the scene they wrote is enough, shooting it from one angle like this. Here we have a simple scene where a man and a woman are meeting at a restaurant.
Hey, sorry I'm late.
It's okay.
So, what's good here?
Listen, we need to talk.
You can even add coverage from a few angles to make it more visually interesting like this.
We need to talk.
Well, what is it?
I know you cheated.
Using the camera to help tell the story means that just as the actors have to change their performance to match the dialogue, the camera needs to change as well. And at the moment she tells him she knows he cheated on her, the cameras have to reflect the change in the relationship. We can change the height of the camera so that we are looking down at him and up at her. This alone changes the tone of the scene. We can also change the angle so there's an awkward negative space, even showing the door in the frame, subconsciously showing that he wants to leave. You can also add camera movement to make the whole scene move along to the emotions of the scene.
Hey, sorry I'm late.
That's okay.
What's good here?
Listen, we need to talk.
What is it?
I know you cheated on me.
Our specials today are the crab stuffed filet mignon, seared wrap
We're gonna
of
need a
lamb.
minute.
Notice the dolly shot. The camera movement in insinuates the man's guilt. Directing isn't just yelling action and cut. You have to use the camera to help tell the story. When you make your shot list, think about how to make the camera a part of the scene.
Framelines goes on location while making a film and gets a behind-the-scenes look at the process.
Hey, you. What? How could you do this to me? You know how much I liked Steve. No. You know how much I liked Steve. I know I never talked to him. He asked you out. That didn't mean you had to say yes. Okay, so let me get this straight. Since I never talked to him and he asked you out, that ended your social contract and now you're in the clear, right? What is the social contract? What are you talking about? Did you even think about my feelings when you went out with him? Which time? You've gone out more than once. Can you believe she did this to me? Steve is so my type. How would I know? Like, you swooped in and took him before I even had the chance to prove he is. Oh, you are so pretentious. Skanky. Rude. Haughty. You're stupid. Selfish. You unreliable. God. Backstabbing. I kind of hate you right now. No good. Oh, no. are evil. Supercilious. It means you're condescending. Which you are too.
And you're a bitch.
You're mean. And you know what? You did look fat in those jeans. His friend is a lawyer. He asked about me? What does he look like? What kind of shoes does he have? Look, don't tell him about the time that I drank too much. I made out with the bartender at Shirley's bachelorette party, okay? Look, did you tell him I make the best brownies?
The idea for the cell phone monologues was this, taking the concept of an actor monologue, usually used for auditions or live theater, and turning it into a narrative short. I really wanted to add great cinematography to what is generally an actor's medium. I've always wanted to work with actress Maya Sayer. She'd done movies like Ides of March with George Clooney. She's part of the web series 8 and 5. She's almost always playing more serious and hardcore characters, and I knew she could be really funny, but I hadn't seen it on film yet. So I wrote this part for her. Maya was a dream to work with. She has a very big theater background, and I love doing the rehearsal process, so we got to rehearse a bit before we shot. So it made things easier on set. When you've had all that work in rehearsal, it makes shooting go a lot smoother. Cinematographer Gil Whitney came on board. We got to shoot at the Columbus Museum of Art. The whole thing that made that very important was, part of the story was I wanted to have a character that was having an enormous fight on the phone, but being in an environment where she had to stay quiet. And I thought a museum would be far more beautiful to shoot in, while at the same time giving a true motivation for trying to keep quiet no matter how angry she was getting.
Which time?
We used the latest digital cameras with really nice, expensive lenses that we rented. Anything to really give a sharpness and just a really sell the beauty of the artwork along with the performance. We had to be very careful. We couldn't get anywhere near a lot of the artwork. We had to keep a safe distance. We had to use very specific LED lighting, because any other lighting we wouldn't be able to use because it could affect or damage the artwork. We had a really good sound department on this. It was really hard conditions. I mean, the air conditioning and the echo in the room made the audio really hard to work with, but Robin Gulcher, who recorded the sound, also did the tweaking in post-production and really made it sing. We had a really good crew. We didn't have a lot of people. We wanted to be able to move in and out really fast. It was a real blessing to be able to shoot inside the Museum of Art. You know, you couldn't shoot with any kind of paintings that were there being borrowed from other museums or, you know, any of the traveling exhibits, because you don't have the rights to use that artwork. But we could only shoot in rooms where the Columbus Museum of Art owned the artwork themselves, which gave us the right to use it. We ended up going out to shoot the front of the museum, the exterior of the museum. We had to try 3 separate times to shoot that because of changing weather conditions. The shot didn't work, or the lighting was bad, or the dolly move wasn't perfect, and we were trying to match the other shot we already did inside the museum. So it took us forever to get that shot, and it took another 9 weeks just to get that one 7-second shot. In terms of the edit, it became a thing of, as she got more animated and excited, the shots would go from one to another a lot quicker. That's why we shot so many of her insults at different points in time, just to really amp up her anxiety is something the audience would feel through the edit and the camera work. From the time I conceived and wrote the project to the time we shot was a little over 2 years before we finished the project from when I first came up with the idea of doing it. I just thought I didn't want to compromise. I wanted it to be exactly how I pictured it in my head, and it took a lot longer to make that happen, but in the end, I got exactly what I wanted.
Scott Spears hosts a roundtable discussion, much like a film festival panel, in your living room.
So, all right, you've got this script. You think it's great. What's the next? What do you, when you start packaging a movie? Well, we'll start with you. What do you start looking for directors? You look cast? Do you think about
It depends on where you're taking the movie and
Right.
what level you're taking the movie. If you're doing it yourself and you're raising the money, if it's a small amount of money, then you can start packaging it the way that you want it. If you're taking that project and you're pitching it to investors and they want bigger people in or whatever, then you kind of reserve some of those things to stay open. You don't want to bring necessarily a package in and say, hey, my brother's directing and my sister's going to be starring in it, and we want $5 million, and they say, that's not going to happen. And then you're out the door. Now, if you come in and you've got a good script, and they say, you know what, this is great, I can get so-and-so, but so-and-so wants so-and-so to direct, and that person gets to, and then, you get a $5 million movie, and you kind of have to live with some things. It's all about making some compromises and trying to get the best team that you can, but ultimately, you're not going to get everything you want. We just went and pitched a movie down in Savannah, and we're talking to some investors, and the conversation started like, we really love the title, and that was it. And it was kind of open from there. Wow, we got a lot of stuff to work on, don't we? So, you really have to. We thought we had a great project, and we went in, and they said, we really love the title. Let's make a movie, but we got to change the script. So.
I remember Charlie Band would just make a movie poster and just say, here, write a movie about this.
Right, and that's kind of the way it felt. And then we just started brainstorming and new ideas came and we kind of went with it and began writing a new draft, and it changed the script a lot.
Gotcha. So Phil, what's your development process once you've kind of got the concept and the script in a form? I mean the script is always being rewritten up till like the picture is locked, but what do you do with it after you've got that script? What's the next step for you?
Well, it comes down to the packaging of it has to make it attractive to people who see it as a commercial property. So they want to see it as a sellable property, a project or property. So for them, it typically can't just hang on the script. The script can be great, but there are a lot of other elements that you need. And in this day and age, if you're going to make your money back, you have to have a name in your movie. If it's a feature film, you have to have a name. You have to have a name that people are going to know, particularly a younger crowd than I happen to be in right now. So it has to be a face, a name that's going to sell DVDs, right? So you sort of make your wish list. In putting together a package, you make your wish list of talent, but you also start to look at the business angle. Okay. How can this movie be sold? How can it make its money back? And the reason you're so focused on that, as you know,
yes,
is people want to know that there's a chance they'll make their money back. And in this business, when you're raising funds privately, the first thing you have to tell them is, by the way, on page 1, you can lose all of your money. So you want the rest of the package to try to mitigate that and try to show them the potential for how this movie can pay off. So it's kind of this combination of what would make you happy as a producer or as a creative team in terms of casting, in terms of what format you're going to shoot it on, all sorts of considerations, design, production design, getting all that stuff going. What's going to make you happy, but what's going to show them that you're doing everything that you can to not lose their money.
No, it's important. So, you've got your script done. What's your next thing?
Well, again, to reiterate what they said, it really depends on the project and and what market you're going into. I think with we in a lot of the shorts that I did, that was certainly on our mind. It was trying to get some named talent, and we got a few name people in there that weren't big names, but they were, they were people that had been on some prominent roles in television, and for us, that was enough to get it into the festivals we needed to get it into, and to get it into the some of the arenas. But if I keep bringing it back to 8 and 5 because I was told I need to,
sell.
Right. No, it really is. I talk about this just because it's such a unique experience to everything else I've done. And like Phil said, on my first feature, I spent all the focus was on raising the money, finding a way to make it sell. Making the movie was so secondary. It really was, and that experience has always turned me off to that way of doing things, even though it's essential. You have to sort of approach a commercial product that way. And I think why 8 and 5 is such a kind of a refreshing way of working at the moment is we sort of, you know, it's in a market that's still relatively new. The web market, we got in right at a time when it was just taking off, and so people were far more forgiving of not having, you know, big name stars in your work, and you can still get noticed as long as you have a high concept or a unique project. And so we just sort of fell into that sweet spot because we're there at the right time in the right place. Now that's changing. I mean, it's starting to move into just like every other business model where you have to have a, you know, lead or some kind of name or attachment or product attachment to your work. But it's been incredibly refreshing because 8 and 5 has kind of broken all the rules that we've had to do all along. It's a no-budget project. It's completely community-driven. It's all volunteer cast and crew. We have no big names attached to it. And it's people all doing what we love, which is to make films and be able to kind of get it out there into the marketplace.
The production assistant, aka set production assistant, PA, or gopher. This is a person responsible for various odd jobs on set, which could include such disparate tasks as running errands, stopping traffic, acting as couriers, fetching items from craft service, etc. Tasks and levels of responsibility can vary greatly, depending on the size of the movie, the needs of the crew, and the skills of the individual PAs themselves. Production assistants are often assigned to individual departments.
For more information on the filmmakers, or if you would like a DVD of tonight's program, please visit www.framelines.tv.